Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I am your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are excited to have our guest, Mr. Gustavo Razzetti, in. Gustavo is one of the world's leading workplace culture thinkers and also the author of business books, actually 4 of them on culture and teamwork. So quite an expert. We have Gustavo on for 2 episodes in this next couple of weeks, and we'll be discussing the ways that companies and teams can best be connected and how to improve remote collaboration while managing asynchronous communication. Also facilitating courageous conversations and defining the right hybrid model for your particular organization. Thanks again for joining us today, Gustavo. Really excited for this conversation.
Hi, Mike, and everyone. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, so Gustavo, I guess to start off, could you just share a little bit about your background? I mean, 4 business books on this topic is quite a feat. So you must know a thing or two about the topic.
I rather would say that I don't know. That's what I write to learn. And I'm actually working on my 5th. So I just started last week. No, in my background, I have over 30 years in the consulting world. I started my career in marketing, communications, then innovation. And then at some point, I realized that companies basically are looking for better ideas, but actually what they need is a better culture. Most of the ideas never see the light of day because their cultures are not open to basically that innovation that comes from within. So I switched path, and now I'm working companies build that type of culture, what we call a fearless culture.
Yeah, I love that word, fearless. It denotes intention and the lack of hesitancy, right? So when you say fearless culture, what does that mean to you?
That's a good point. First of all, I'd like to make the distinction that being fearless is not the absence of fear, because fear is a basic human emotion. It's like a traffic light. If you don't pay attention to it, you're going to get into an accident, right? However, there are people that get paralyzed by their emotions, and there are leaders and teams that actually they take care of that emotion. They become aware and they say, okay, what is this emotion trying to tell me? So, for example, the Navy SEALs, they learn to deal with those emotions. They don't say, hey, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I'm going to go and I'm going to kill everyone. No, they know that when fear is there, they need to be more intentional, more aware what the dangers that are surrounding them. So that's the part about being fearless. It's not that, hey, I'm a superhero. It's, I have fear, but I can incorporate it and act versus being paralyzed or afraid.
Yeah, and I would even take a step further and say maybe it is even invigorating or allows you to have even more confidence when it comes if you're prepared, right?
Absolutely. For example, when it comes to organizations and the innovation space, many companies get paralyzed because, of course, innovating, even if in a tiny daily task, it's intimidating. You don't know if the outcome, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Are we going to screw up? However, there are companies that say, okay, let's screw up. And if it works, great. If not, we learn something and we move on. So it's invigorating, to your point.
Yeah, I love that. So that you're encouraging companies to embrace the fact that there are going to be mistakes. It's not all going to be perfect. And not only is that okay, but that's good, because then you can pivot and move away from those things, never to return, right?
Absolutely. Now, everyone's talking about artificial intelligence, for example. There are people that say, hey, nothing's going to change. There are people that say, hey, we're all going to be out of our jobs in a week or now. Well, neither mindset helps. Being fearless, you'll say, okay, change is coming. What can we do? The quicker we get into it, the quicker we start experimenting, the sooner the better.
I love that. Boy, I think I might enjoy reading some of your business books. I'm going to have to check those out. So in light of the topic we're on today, talking about this hybrid workforce, What do you think are some of the key challenges and things that companies are facing or feeling like they're going to face as they look to transition from a hybrid type work model?
I think the biggest challenge is, like in many aspects of change, is fighting reality, right? When things are changing and the train already left the station and companies say, no, that's not going to happen. So we need to understand what are the biggest trends. Like I don't know, a couple of decades or more than a decade ago, someone created 9 to 5, actually a century or so ago, to structure how we work. It was meant to keep people within a logical amount of hours, because at that point, people were working like 7 days per week. But now that model not only is not helping people work fewer hours, but actually it's constraining, because everyone has a different approach when it comes to work. There are people that maybe they can work 8 hours in a row or 12 hours in a row, and then they need a rest. So there are different models. And I think the biggest challenge is trying to recreate that 9 to 5, rather than understand that the biggest opportunity that the hybrid workplace provides is flexibility. And that can apply to any industry that you're working in.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when you're trying to maintain, let's say the company has a really good culture and they feel like they're in a good place, how do they overcome that fear and make sure they avoid having issues when they decide to go partially hybrid and have remote workers? How do they maintain that culture?
There are two things. First, I think that the companies that are the most afraid of the change are the ones who actually don't have a good culture, because companies with a good culture, they have open conversations. They're more transparent. They involve employees in this type of conversations. Hey, let's explore. They're more experimental. Often, most of the organizations they are resisting the change are the ones that their culture is already in a bad place, and they don't want to have those conversations. Like, take the Elon Musks of the world. It's better for them to say, hey, it's going to be my way or the highway, and that's it.
That's a great point. So how do companies that maybe are feeling like there's a feeling of commensalism where maybe neither really benefits, but neither's harmed. Rather than that, it's more like, how do we actually create more synergy and actually a positive uplift both for the worker and for the company while they make these types of transitions?
Good point. I think that many people think of remote or hybrid like something frivolous, because it feels like, employees are entitled, they want to work this way or the other, that's it, rather than seeing what's really working. When we hit the pandemic, people were forced to work remotely, or most people were forced to work remotely. And what happened? Most of the businesses not only stay afloat, but actually thrive. So employees say, hey, I was able to adapt. I was able to keep your business running. So now why do you want me back into the office? I think that it's understanding that what benefits the employees can also benefit the companies. Many leaders are stuck to say, if the employees want it this way, it's because they just are lazy, they are slackers, they don't want to do the great job. But flexibility, to your point, benefits both people that can adjust their life to their work arrangement, but also companies, because there are a lot of metrics that show that the more flexible the workplace is, the better results organizations get.
Yeah, that's a great point. That flexibility also, to me, if I'm looking at it from an employee's perspective, might mean safety. I know one of the topics that you really talk a lot about and that you're an expert in is more about physiological safety, right? In construction, the industry that we serve quite a bit, we really focus on safety. It's a very important thing. It helps culture. Obviously, nothing can destroy a culture more than accidents or injuries or a death in a company. It really has far-reaching impacts that are not good for anybody. And so, what do you think is some low-hanging fruit related to physiological safety that construction companies or other companies could be taking advantage of that they don't know about?
Sure. There's two types of safeties that companies need to take care of. One is job safety. So you don't want people harmed in the site. But then there's this idea of psychological safety, which is feeling safe to be part of a team. And that includes from speaking up to sharing your perspectives to challenge the status quo. So when it comes to change, one of the most difficult roles for leaders is to create an environment in which people can speak up without the fear of retaliation, right? And I think that in the end, if you hire great talent, you want them to chime in and give you alternative solutions. So one of the quick ways to approach this is like, for example, asking people what's working, what's not working. So by acknowledging what's working, we want to confirm that we as a team are doing things the right way, and we should keep doing those. But also what's not working, it's opening the door that you as a leader or as the manager of or project manager realize that there's always room for improvement, and then you're opening the floor for people to share their ideas.
Yeah, that's great. And I really am fascinated with this topic of psychological safety, where you can, as an employee or a manager or even an owner, everybody can feel in their mind like they're open to communicate properly if they have an issue with their situation. Again, working remote, or other people are feeling like they're comparing to somebody who has to be in an office environment or has to punch a time clock in person at the job site or at the office. With these different teams, I think it is very important to have everybody feel the same in their role, regardless of what their tasks are and what they're asked to do. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, I mean, if you're a business owner, if you're a project manager, you want to continue doing things one way because it's been effective, right? Throughout your career, you develop that this is the best way we can do our work, our job. However, there are people in other industries that are thinking how they can disrupt your business. So while you're trying to preserve a particular way of working, there are people, startups in the construction business that say, hey, how can we make money in a different way? So if you don't open that space for your own employees to challenge your way of working, someone else is going to do it, and you're going to be out of business. So one exercise that we do with companies is like, if we want to put our own business out of business, right? What will we do? So it's a very interesting exercise because you invite owners and team members to think, okay, what are the things that we can do to basically kill our own business and steal all our clients from ourselves? And that's where you start feeling that, oh, someone else can do that tomorrow. So we don't anticipate that move. Someone else is going to make it.
Yeah, that's a great insight. That's, it sounds like you're talking about businesses need to reinvent themselves almost every day, where they're constantly trying to burn down what they thought they used to be or how they used to work and build new as they move forward. Is that a fair analogy for you?
Totally. One thing that's interesting that we are thinking about adding an irrigation system into our lawn, right? It's a huge one, so we are planning. And we asked for a couple of estimates. People came. The most important thing is they came with what today feels like typical traditional solution. But then my son started doing research, and there are a lot of tech companies have developed irrigation systems not only that are easier to implement, but the technology, everything that you can do with the different models and how you can program them, it's 10 times more innovative than what the traditional number one players in the area, live in Chicago, are basically offering the client. So the guys continue to do exactly the same way they did it for decades. And there are people that are putting technology that it's not the new technology or their job. They could incorporate that new technology into their offering, but they're not, because they stick to the usual players, the usual vendors.
They're scared of change, right?
Yeah.
Fear of the unknown.
Absolutely.
But unlike you, it sounds like, and it's interesting. I think you, while being a little bit facetious, you were also serious on, you write these books because you are learning yourself. And it sounds to me like what you've discovered has been so mind-boggling to you and so fascinating that you felt compelled to share that with the world by writing books. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, I don't want to keep my learning to myself, right? But
Okay.
also I get feedback. So I put my ideas in front of people and people say, oh, great, that's good. Maybe some might challenge my thinking. Some people would say, you don't know what you're talking about. I got so many kind of anything within that range. And it's interesting because you keep yourself like learning and challenging your own ideas.
Yeah, never get too comfortable, right?
No.
Well, that's a great way to run a business, and that's also, I think, a great way to live. So, kudos to you for finding that place within yourself to try and continue to always be learning and always be trying to improve and expand what you thought you already understood. That's awesome. So now that you've written these books, what is what is the most rewarding and exciting thing that you felt from going through those experiences so far?
The last book I wrote that's called Remote Not Distant, that addressed how to build a culture in a hybrid or remote workplace. One of the most fascinating parts was I decided to involve people throughout the journey, right? So from selecting the book title or the book cover to also I opened the manuscript to a group of 20 people and they were able to read it and make comments and suggestions and pushback, whatever. So that journey that wasn't alone, that was I was traveling with many other people, was really, really interesting. One thing that was important is I was asking for feedback, not for people to make the decision for me. So when people voted, I wasn't selecting necessarily the design that got the most votes. I used people's comments to basically inform my decision. So that was also really important. For managers, I always say ask for feedback, but that doesn't mean that you need to take everyone's feedback, right? You also need to be clear and that's something tricky. There are people that don't ask for advice, and there are people that are always changing their mind because everyone's telling them something different.
Well, and I love that you say that, because I think what you're sharing is that you really need to have confidence and be very decisive and intentional with your approach, with really what the end goal is and what you want to try and accomplish as a manager or as a business owner or a crew leader. I mean, you really should have the end in mind that you're trying to get to. But I also love that you're really advocating for leaders in any capacity to be open to that feedback and also invite it, not just open-minded when somebody brings it, but actually go out of your way intentionally and ask for that feedback.
The point about feedback is like people are giving you feedback, they're not sharing it with you. So if you don't ask, you're never gonna get it. So it's happening, you know. It's like let's say your crew is talking on the site about your company. So the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you don't create the right environment for them to share those thoughts, you're never gonna learn.
And most of what's shared is probably going to be the ugly, right? When you don't invite.
Yes, and also the little bad things are going to turn into ugly because that's what we call like the people keep piling up conflicts or this conflict debt, right? So a tiny thing that we didn't like, a disagreement between two coworkers starts to pile up. And over time, then it becomes a huge issue. So the sooner you're able to tap into that conflict, the easier it's going to be to fix. But also you're going to avoid that conflict debt from piling up.
I love that. Conflict debt. That's good. Yeah. In our software company, we talk about technical debt. And that's where we have so much code that it's too heavy and we have to drag it around. We have to prune and clean it up, right? And keep it minimized so that we're not causing slowness or challenges with the existing system because of old code that, is technical debt, right?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Yeah, I think that culture and software are really two great parallels to learn one from each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. So tell us this, Gustavo. I mean, we're going to have you back on next week and talk a little bit more about managing asynchronous communication, and we can let you talk about what that means to you. But can you just tease a little bit about why it's important out in the field as well as the office that we have asynchronous communication within our organizations?
Definitely. I think that we are default to collaborating in real time. So every time we need something, we either send an email or we create a meeting or we call someone. But in the end, if it's not urgent or it's not complex, we are constantly interrupting people. So if someone is doing a task, they need to take a phone call, they need to get into a meeting, and then they stop doing their work, and then the work doesn't progress the right way. So sometimes you need to be focused. So you're building something and you're stopping what you're building. Not only the motor is going to dry earlier than needed, but people are going to lose what they were doing. So it's important that asynchronous communication gives you time to reflect. So there, I know a manager that's running a lot of sites, different kind of construction stuff that they do in a company, and the owner is so anxious that it's always pissing all the sites, calling the people, the crews, they always interrupting them. So people get upset. They basically, that delays the delivery of the projects. So why doesn't the guy wait and then maybe share all the thoughts in one document versus calling people or showing up and interrupt people?
Yeah, I love everything you're saying, and I think the listeners are really going to enjoy the opportunity to maybe check out these books that you've written. We'll leave links in the show notes, of course, but clearly you're an expert on the topic. Is there anything else that we've missed or that we haven't covered on today's discussion that you wanted to talk about and bring up?
I would want to reiterate the power of flexibility. We talk about flexibility. So when people have ownership and they can design and define when they want to work, how they want to work, they're going to get better results. When I say when they want to work, it's not that, hey, I'm going to work 1 hour. But there are some people that maybe in fewer hours, they can achieve the same that other people working without interruption. Some people need breaks, mental breaks, for them to re-energize and then refocus. And it's important that companies understand that rather than try to dictate a one-size-fits-all, try to see what's the best way that each of your team members can work and help them do their work.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I mean, one thing, and I know a lot of construction companies do work maybe 4 10-hour days. That's something I always joked when I was young and doing construction and started a construction company, and I always said, man, if I could work 2 20s, I would love that. Because I honestly felt like I had enough energy and capacity that rather than, rolling tools out, bringing them back, and rolling tools out, bringing them back, and rolling up the courts, bringing them back, and going through all that, I felt like I could really push through a 20-hour day easier than doing 5 8-hour days in a row and probably get more done. Now that, of course, that's, extreme. And I was being a little bit facetious in that comment, but, a 4 10-hour workday week or 3 13s or something like that for certain people or certain types of work or certain crews might be a great way to allow your teams to get a break and maybe hit it a little harder. Maybe you're running 2 sets of crews and you're working 6 days a week and they're working 3 13-hour days for each crew, or something of that nature, so that you're getting more productivity and also the culture and the employees feel more fulfilled in life than just being a slave to their work and their job every day.
So that's brilliant. And to your point, maybe working with 2 crews, one crew works the 10-hour shift, the other work maybe more regular, because some people might want to work regular shifts 5 days a week, and the other one longer 4, and then everyone's happy.
Yeah. And productivity could go through the roof because, again, you're meeting the needs of the individuals, and you probably have groups of employees that would fit within each bucket of that desire. So maybe something interesting to check out for your organizations, for the listeners. And man, Gustavo, this has been a lot of fun and very enlightening.
Thank you, Mike. Let's keep the conversation rolling.
Sounds good. So before we wrap up today, a couple things. We did a little word game. You chose a word for me and I chose a word for you. What was the word you gave to me and how did I do using it?
I gave you the word commensalism.
All right. Did I do okay getting it into the conversation?
Yes, fantastic. And commensalism, for the other thing, is when someone basically it's taking benefit from the team, but it's not harming the team. So that's important to kind of...
Yeah, good word for this conversation. And I gave you the word symbiotic, which is basically having a mutually beneficial relationship. Those two words are interesting. And you actually used yours the next sentence after mine. So good work.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Well, anything else before we wrap up today on the conversation, Gustavo?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and look forward to having another conversation with you next week.
Absolutely. See you next week.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.